Hello everyone, I am Dimple Rangila. Today we'll talk about child-centered teaching learning process. So, let's first talk about what is child-centered teaching learning process. Students learn by solving some real-life problems they confront in their day-to-day life. The teacher's role is to create a situation in which a problem may develop and help the students to identify issues, come up with tentative solutions, try those solutions, and come out with the best possible solution to the problem. Some of the child-centered methods that we are going to discuss today are playway method, project method, problem-solving method, and discovery method. So first we'll talk about playway method. Play is a natural instinct of children and is the natural expression of their needs. Engagement in play activity is for enjoyment and recreation rather than for serious or practical purpose. Play allows children to use their creativity while developing their imagination, physical, cognitive, and emotional strength. Play is important to healthy brain development. It is through play that children at a very early age engage and interact in the world around them. Thus, playway method involves a spontaneous action, challenges, is interesting for children. Child has intrinsic motivation for play-related behavior. It also brings about self-imposed discipline. It leads to cooperation and collaboration when children are together in groups. It gives a freedom in the direction and they work without fear and as it is not imposed. So let us now see how is work different from play. Work is considered to be difficult whereas play gives pleasure. Work is something that is imposed by others, whereas play is voluntary. Physical works bring tiredness with it, whereas play is an enjoyable experience. Work is controlled, whereas play gives more freedom and autonomy to the child. So let's see the advantages of playway method. Playing games is a natural instinct with the young children. They not only participate in the game spontaneously, given freedom, they can organize the game effectively themselves. Children can create new games, they devise the rules for playing the game and observe strictly the self-created discipline. This helps to nurture the creative skills of children along with the development of several life skills like problem solving, leadership, rational thinking, self-expression, communication skills, cooperative learning, group living, etc. Learning thus becomes natural, joyful, and energizing experience. It provides sufficient scope to the child to fulfill their physical, emotional, and cognitive needs. It helps to build healthy student-teacher and student-student relationships. Principles of playway method. So, there are certain principles that are involved in the playway method. Let's look at these principles one by one. First is the principle of unfolding innate potentials. So, play, if children are provided with a stimulating environment, there are toys and other materials available for the child to explore, it is kind of a favorable condition that we are creating for the child, which in turn nurtures the innate potential of the child. Principle of natural instinct. Play appeals naturally to the child as they internalize the experiences that they are having. Principle of complete freedom. Since play behavior is something that is enjoyable and if there is no restriction, the children enjoy the freedom that is given to them during free play. Principle of activity. So play is one such behavior which involves active involvement of children and they are not there as passive beings. Principle of pleasure. So play is a pleasurable and enjoyable activity as we talked about in the previous slides. Thus, it sustains the interest of the child in the activity. Principle of creativity. In play, children have several alternatives. So at times, if they get bored of doing and repeating one activity altogether, they have a lot of alternatives that are there which brings a lot of innovation and spontaneity. Principle of responsibility. When children are playing and they are together with other children, they devise their own rules and also assume responsibility. Now we look at the role of teachers in playway method. So as a teacher, you are a facilitator for the children in the class. So one must help the students to initiate games suggested by them or in developing new games with the involvement of students. Create a learning environment to make the children feel that learning is a joyful experience. Prepare relevant teaching learning materials after designing the learning activities. Arrange the learning activities from simple concept to the complex. Be a guide, supervisor, and a leader for the students during the learning process. Evaluate the students through playway activities. Evaluation should not be ignored. Note that the Montessori and the kindergarten teaching methods were developed based on the playway method. Yet, there are certain limitations of playway method. Let's look at these. This method is considered to be more suitable to the pre-primary and the primary level of students. The contents and concepts of all subjects cannot be introduced through this method. Sometimes, a few children may give more importance to playing games than learning through playway method. So there, as a teacher, it's your role how to make them strike a balance between play and the learning that they have to do. Next method is project method. Let's look at the characteristics of project method. So, there is a problem. Every project is intended to solve at least one problem which is perceived by the student. Becoming aware of the problem is the first step in the formulation of the project, and it is also a very important step. Next is objective. The success of project method lies in the student's understanding of its objectives, that why they are doing a particular activity. The objectives with which the students pursue the project are intimately associated with their real life situations and would be fulfilling some of their cherished desires. Activity. After defining the objectives, it is a teacher's duty to create a learning environment. Students begin to learn through self-planning, group discussion, and group activities. So here, the teacher's role is to be a facilitator. Reality. It is necessary to create real-life activities for effective learning of children. Liberty. In project method, learning takes place naturally, so students perform activities freely and without any compulsion. Utility. The learned knowledge must serve the immediate needs of the students in their present life. It is necessary that the project method must be useful to the present needs of the child. Integration. Since a project is based on the real life problems, real experiences for carrying out the project, and no real experience involves the knowledge of only one subject. So, as a teacher, one has to combine the knowledge of many subjects appropriately for successful completion of the project. Integration of subjects learnt in the classroom is the basic requirement in a project work. Democratic values. While conducting a project, the students working in a group need to cooperate with each other. They need to respect each other, value each other's opinion, assume and share responsibility of the work that they are doing together. So, the advantages of project method are: the project method is based on the principle of active learning. So, the children are not seen as passive beings. They have an active agency and voice. The student gets totally involved in the activity, which helps in enhancing his or her knowledge, understanding and skills in real life situation, and ultimately in developing a holistic personality. Since all the activities of a project are related to the real life experiences, each of such activities is meaningful to the student. The student enjoys full freedom in conducting a project. This develops self-confidence to act and also promotes a sense of responsibility among the students. The student gets acquainted with the types of work which he or she is expected to perform in future. Thus, the project method helps the student in his or her preparation for a future life. Student gets the scope to imbibe several social qualities like cooperation, teamwork, group affinity, and sacrifice through project work. Interest and motivation for the project activities are spontaneously created, and there is no external pressure or persuasion that is required to attract the students towards learning. Completion of the project gives individuals a sense of accomplishment, which in turn encourages them for further learning. Now we'll do the problem-solving method. So there is a model that is called the ideal model by Bransford and Steen in 1984. It was given. It follows a number of steps. So the first step is to identify the problem along with the children, defining the problem through thinking about it and sorting out the relevant information, Exploring solutions through looking at alternatives, brainstorming in which the children are asked to give as many ideas regarding the problem that are coming to their mind, and then checking out different points of view and multiple perspectives on that problem. Acting on and the strategies and working out the strategies, looking back and then evaluating the effects of your activity. Since 1980s, researches on problem solving have also inclined to be more context based. By context, we mean the situation in which a particular problem is posed. That means the problem a student faces while studying content is always specific to a particular context or a situation. Therefore, the solution to that problem has to be sought within the context or situation. The nature of the problem might be different from another problem faced in any other context. In 1983, Mayer defined problem solving as a multiple step process where the problem solver must find relationships between the past experiences and the problem at hand and then acting upon a solution. Another model of the problem-solving process was given by Gick in 1986. This model identifies a basic sequence of 3 cognitive activities that are involved in the problem-solving approach. First is representing the problem, which includes calling up the appropriate context knowledge or the previous knowledge that the learner has, identifying the goal and relevant starting conditions to the problem. Solution search includes refining the goals, finding alternative solutions or thinking of hypotheses, and developing a plan of action to reach the goal, which is very important step. And finally, implementing the solution includes executing the plan of action and finally evaluating the results. As a classroom teacher, while following the problem-solving method, you are advised to consider the following steps. Anticipate or identify problems. Use information from diverse sources to arrive at a clearer understanding of the problem and its root causes. Remember, we talked about the context. So, the context is different. So, we need to have our problems and the information should come from diverse sources. Generate alternative solutions. Evaluate strengths and weaknesses of alternatives, including potential risks and benefits and the short-term and long-term consequences. Select an alternative that is most appropriate to goal, context and available resources. Establish criteria for evaluating effectiveness of solution or decision. Thus, problem-solving method involves reflective thinking reasoning because we are bringing in the past knowledge and results from achievement of certain abilities, skills and attitude. You should provide such situations and activities from which a problem emerges. It involves a definite procedure of confronting the problem, finding out its solution inductively, and lastly, testing the adequacy of the generalization by a deductive approach. The heuristic method. The word heuristic is derived from the Greek word heuriska, which means to find out or to discover. It is also known as the inquiry method. According to Professor Henry Edward Armstrong, who introduced this method for teaching science, heuristic method is a method of teaching which involves a placing of children as far as possible in the attitude of a discoverer. It is a method in which children discover and find things by themselves. They are placed in the position of discoverers or inventors. Problems are provided to the students. The students are expected to take observations and conduct experiments as per the instructions. Conclusions are drawn by the students and hence they are introduced to reasoning skills from their own observations and experiments. So remember, the child is the discoverer and a mini scientist in this case. Thus, the stages of discovery methods are identification of the problem, firstly, experimentation and observation, problem solving, and finally, evaluation. Let's